Let the word go forth.
Fool me once.
Are you fired up?
I'm not a crook.
Are you ready to go?
Shame on you.
It's Abe Lincoln's Top Hat, hosted by Ben Kissel.
Fool me, can't get fooled again.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Ben Kissel with Marcus Parks.
Hey, Ben.
Just me and Mr. Parks today. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great.
That's great.
I'm full of B vitamins.
Ooh, that's the best kind of vitamin. They buzz in your tummy. That's exactly what you want to have in there. I want to thank everybody who came out to our live last podcast on the Left Show in Chicago. What a great time. Drunken mayhem. Way too many shots of Malort.
Ugh.
Good. They'll make you violent. No one should drink that stuff. Stop giving it to us, please, God. This episode of Abe Lincoln's Top Hat is desperately needed.
Yeah.
All of us have to vent and get this past week out of our brains in order to just have a nice dinner, you know? And if you want to vent, please write into the dumpster fire chats. I just released part 2. Email me at benk721@gmail.com and try to keep it blurby, and you can vent out there, and I'll read them. And those have been really an exciting thing.
Yeah, people are loving them, man.
Yeah, I hope so. It's me recording in my closet, so it's a little bit different. A lot of times I'm getting messages being like, "It sounds like you're crying," and be like, "I'm just looking at my jackets," and I'm so in awe of my Jose Bank collection that sure I'll get a little weepy sometimes. But speaking of clothes, we also finally have the Abe Lincoln's Top Hat T-shirts.
Yes.
So please go to Cave Comedy Radio. I believe it's /merch.
It's just cavecomedyradiomerch.com. You can
Perfect.
get a T-shirt of the skull of Abraham Lincoln puking out the American flag.
Absolutely beautiful shirts, and we're gonna have just a shirt with the logo on it as well if you have to go pick up your children from school and you don't want to get arrested or having your kids taken away. All right, so let's just start with the story that we decided to begin with: Donald Trump and Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon, of course, he's on the National Security Council. Donald Trump theoretically put him on this council. However, Donald Trump did not realize what he was signing when he was signing it, which is more horrifying than any Freddy Krueger nightmare you could possibly have. The man is more dangerous than we thought because he's not even reading the executive orders that he's putting through.
Well, this is somewhat in line with some of the predictions that we had a few months ago, is that we said that Donald Trump, even though, and a lot of Donald Trump supporters as well, so they're like, okay, he doesn't have any experience whatsoever being a politician, but he's probably going to surround himself with people that have a lot more experience in government. That's what we thought.
Well, that's what we were hoping for.
That's what we were hoping for. And now we are getting somebody who knows what they're doing and somebody who is doing all the heavy lifting. Unfortunately, that person is Steve Bannon.
Right. The worm tongue himself. He was on the cover of Time magazine. Donald Trump was very upset with that because he wants to be on the cover of Time magazine, not weird alcoholic Steve Bannon. And so it's absolutely fascinating. Steve Bannon, it doesn't matter who they have around him in the cabinet or, in the Senate or, in the Congress that might be reasonable or rational people, because it seems like Steve Bannon has a firm grasp on the role of worm tongue.
Yeah.
And he is not really exposing Donald Trump to opposing views whatsoever.
And we got to say, we are not comparing Donald Trump to Theoden.
No, apparently he was very good.
He's my favorite character in Lord of the Rings. We are definitely not comparing Theoden to Donald Trump. But
we would never do that. Not here on this show. We would never do that.
But, I think a worm tongue is a very good comparison when you're talking about Steve Bannon.
Right. And, of course, Donald Trump, you can...
Who's Sauron?
Who is Sauron? That's a good question. Donald Trump, you can imagine his ego is taking a bit of a hit with all the Steve Bannon coverage. Of course, Karl Rove being referred to as Bush's brain. This happens. McNamara, of course, being sort of the creator of the Vietnam War and things like that. Presidents often don't like to be discredited for their intelligence, and specifically not presidents like Donald Trump, which I think is why he is so upset when he sees Bannon on the cover and when he sees the thousands and thousands of people protesting against him. We're going to get into the legality of the 7-country ban, the so-called Muslim travel ban, a little bit later on here in the episode, coming up very soon. But I want to talk a little bit about Sean Spicer and this hilarious notion that all the thousands of people protesting against Donald Trump and one of his policies, such as the ban and a series of other things, are paid protesters. I've been an actor for a decade in New York City. It is hard to get money.
Yeah.
And very difficult to pay. If you are a producer, to pay thousands and thousands of background actors. Do they fill out W-2 forms? How does it even, or do they audition? Is there random, how do you write on cardboard? Do you write on it well? Can you scream dump Trump for me?
Yeah. If
Dump
there was
Trump. Oh, that's not good enough. I'm sorry. You can't be paid. You can't be a paid protester. And this is one of the great ironies that no one really talks about is Donald Trump, when he was running for the presidency of the United States, 1/3, this is according to a university study, an Oxford University professor named Philip Howard. They always sound like washing machines. Professors have very distinct names. Philip Howard, it sounds like a fully functioning light bulb company. He found that 33% of pro-Trump traffic was driven by bots and highly automated accounts. And of course, Hillary Clinton used 22% of pro-Hillary tweets came from bots paid for by the campaign. So Donald Trump, the irony of him talking about people who actually put their feet on the ground and went out and actively protested, the audacity for him, or Sean Spicer in this case, who is the mouthpiece of Donald Trump. By the way, every time Sean Spicer gives a press conference, Donald Trump is sitting there loading a gun, watching it. Sean Spicer, you can tell when he gets caught in a trap because Donald Trump had tweeted something that is so ridiculous, such as the so-called judge that we'll get into regarding the Muslim ban, a whole series of other things. Sean Spicer is just like, he is watching.
Yeah, and so is Kellyanne Conway.
Well, although she's been quite discredited with her Bowling Green massacre. I guess lie. We're just going to say
it's a lie.
No
it's a
mistake.
bold-faced lie.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the funny things with this administration and Donald Trump. Cannot look at reality for what it is, and they have to always have an excuse. A lot of people were wondering, how is Donald Trump not going to recognize the thousands and thousands of people protesting, and how he doesn't recognize it is just completely make it an issue of paid actors paid for by Soros, and therefore nullifying their dissent and their voices.
I mean, we know a lot of actors, and hell, a lot of our friends, a lot of people here on CCR go out for a lot of auditions.
Yes.
We would have heard about the protester cattle call.
Oh, absolutely. I would have been there.
Yeah, we would have heard about this, but the problem with this is that Trump's most ardent supporters, that study that you just cited, it comes from a university, a liberal university, and they're just going to say fake news.
Well, they did clarify that 22% was also for Hillary. We knew this was actually, this isn't even a diss necessarily on Trump. He saw new media and he knew how to monetize it, and he saved a lot of money.
Yeah, but they're still going to say this is fake news. Like, 22% were Hillary. Well, why is Trump's higher? They're just putting that in to make it sound real. Because there's actually a spokesman came out just a few days ago and said that they will keep repeating the words fake news until they stop attacking the president.
Until it becomes real. Of course, Donald Trump, in one of the most atrocious tweets of his presidency, which is something we have to say now, talks about how all negative polls are fake news.
Yeah.
But I would assume positive ones, those are legit. That's real. That's good news. And of course, Sean Spicer, SNL, got him really good with an impression from Melissa McCarthy that also apparently riled up the president. It is unbelievable what gets under this guy's skin. And let's stick with media for a second, because of course the media is really one of the major cornerstones of Trump's campaign. Without all the free media coverage, millions and millions of dollars in free media coverage, I don't think he would be sitting, strangely, in the Oval Office right now. And so Trump just had an interview with Bill O'Reilly, and it was a fascinating interview because Bill O'Reilly basically went against every single thing that Bill O'Reilly has said his entire life regarding American exceptionalism and how this nation is superior specifically to the Russians. They were discussing the Russians and Donald Trump's relationship with Putin, which, Marcus, you told me earlier, MSNBC had a 2013 interview with Donald Trump where Trump was discussing his great relationship with Putin.
And I quote, "I do have a relationship, and I can tell you that he's very interested in what we're doing here today." When he was asked about that in a later interview last year, he said, "What do you call a relationship?"
Oh, my goodness. I
said,
don't know.
He said, "What do you call a relationship? I mean, he treats me with great respect."
This is sort of his version of when Bill Clinton was discussing what the word is means. Yes, indeed. What do you call a relationship?
Yeah, what do you call a relationship? When he flat out said, "We do have a relationship."
Right. So in this interview, they're talking about the Russians and the annexing of Crimea, what's happening in the Ukraine, just the fact that Putin murders the vast majority of his political opponents. I mean, Donald Trump, in this country, Donald Trump was able to do away with his political opponents by calling them silly playground names. In Russia, they poison them with plutonium. It's just a bit of a different nation.
Yeah.
Although this is one of those, and we'll get into it now. So then Donald Trump, when discussing this with Bill O'Reilly, was like, "What, you think America is so innocent? You don't think we've ever done anything wrong?" This is sort of the crux of his argument. And this is one of those funny situations when I listen to Donald Trump where he's not entirely wrong. We have a lot of blood on our hands in this country as well.
Which is such an ironic thing, because that is something that the left has been saying for a long time,
Right.
and that is something that the right hates the left for.
Exactly. Of course, we have to go back to Obama's so-called apology tour, where he simply went to foreign nations and said America has a new president in town, and we're not going to be quite so hawkish, and we're apologizing for blowing up the Middle East the way we did.
Yeah, sorry for the 100,000 dead Iraqis.
You know, it wasn't. And now we have a president, and the right just. I mean, they made him seem as if he was, Karl Marx himself. I mean, they pretended like Barack Obama hated this country. They were so pissed off that he threw America under the bus. And now we have a sitting president who believes that the American ideal is just as good or as bad as the Russian.
Well, I think this is more reflective on Trump's supporters than it is on Trump himself, because like you said, he's right. I understand that completely. When he's right, I have to give him credit that he's right. But his supporters are the exact same people that would send all these forwarded emails saying that Obama hates America.
Oh, absolutely. And have Obama dressed as, in his Muslim garb and a whole series of things. There was that was a real picture. His father, Obama, went over to Kenya and put on traditional garb, and they made it seem as if he had, converted and was the next Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. I mean, it was absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean, the pretzels that Trump supporters are the convictional pretzels that they're having to make is insane. They are bending on every single principle that they have ever had, and not to mention the religious right that's bending every single principle that they've ever had to get their Trojan horse into the White House, Mike Pence.
Right.
All of these people, I mean, they're just proving that their convictions are nowhere near as strong as they said they were. Of course, I'm not saying that the left's convictions are extremely strong, but what I'm saying is that the right has always prided itself on its convictions, that they are they are the party of morals. That's what they've been selling themselves on, the moral majority. They have been selling themselves on that for decades now.
Absolutely.
And now they are showing themselves to have none of that. They have no conviction. They have no morals, because they are following this person blindly because he might give them something that they want.
And this is the difficult part if you are a Republican, if you are, a Paul Ryan or a Kevin McCarthy or a John McCain. This is only we're in week 3 of this entire situation. They are really at their wits' end already, and we don't know exactly what they're going to be able to do, because we don't forget, especially recent history. I mean, 2012, Mitt Romney, when he was running against Obama, obviously, wrote a book, No Apologies. And, of course, he's a Mormon. All they do is apologize. Mormons, I mean, if you do anything wrong, you got to apologize. Yeah. But that was really just one of the massive attack ads, and one of the main complaints that the right had against Obama was that he was, theoretically, or he didn't, symbolize what American exceptionalism was supposed to be enough. And then we have Donald Trump now, of course, just straight up comparing us or equating us to Russia and our bad deeds versus Russian bad deeds being on an equal playing field, which is absolutely astonishing to hear a sitting president talk and to say and talk about. And we know for a fact, of course, if he was a Democrat, they would demand an impeachment or even, it would just be absolutely insane.
Easily. I mean, Putin bombed an entire apartment building to get Russia into which war was that? The Chechenian War.
Well, that was that. No, that was to get him elected. So then, of course,
excuse me, that's right.
So he bombed the hotel, blamed it on the Chechens, ran on a platform condemning the Chechnyan terror attacks, and then, of course, it comes out that he was the one who set the entire thing up. And it's really a classic political maneuver: create a problem, run on the campaign to solve that problem. And that was a lot of the complaints that people had when it came down to Hillary Clinton, when she discussed, crime and over imprisonments and our incarceration rates being, vastly too large. 25% of the world's imprisoned people, and we have 5% of the world's population. Really horrible stuff. And they hearkened back to some of the policies that she championed for in the 1990s. And I think a lot of people saw that as a political hypocrisy. But that is really 101. Create a problem, run on the campaign to solve that problem, and hopefully no one catches on that you were the instigator of the problem in the first place.
I mean, false flag operations, America is no stranger to these. Of course, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the false flag incident that got us into the Vietnam War. And some people could say that, of course, let's go ahead and go for it. Let's go for 9/11.
Sure.
We're of the opinion that 9/11 was allowed to happen. Or at least I'm of the opinion that some people who could have stopped it didn't stop it in order to get us into another Middle Eastern war.
And again,
we are definitely not innocent of these crimes.
Saudi Arabia is still not on the terror watch list when it comes to the 7 states that aren't allowed to travel here. Although, of course, now they are allowed to travel here because there has been there is a stay on the travel ban, and so we can move to that right now. I mean, it is interesting though. These sort of, I do think about Trump and his lack of desire for knowledge. When he does sign these random things, and he doesn't even, for Steve Bannon again with the Security Council and stuff like that, it hurts me to have a president who doesn't enjoy getting in the books and understanding the policies that he's putting forward. And now we're seeing the ramifications, of course, with this Muslim travel ban, and we'll get into some of that here in a second. But as Barack Obama was so significant during the month of February because he was, the ultimate example of upward mobility, and you can be white or black or, not a woman apparently, but and you can still become president of the United States.
You can come from a family with a single mother.
Yeah, and it gave Black History Month an extra oomph to it, a nice little wow, look at that. We can see where our progress has taken us. And again, of course, Obama made some horrible decisions and things like that. But Trump, I think October is going to be a good month for him because it's like Halloween, not just because he's orange like a pumpkin or whatever, just because it's like October will be the month where it's kind of cool to have a President Trump because it's scary as hell. And you're walking through your Duane Reads and everything's a skeleton and it's just macabre all around. And then you're like, President Trump fits right in. He'll be a great October president. That's what I believe. So it's now Washington State versus Donald Trump. And this went to the Ninth Circuit court there. The judges are William Canby, Michelle Friedland, and Judge Clifton being a Bush appointee. The other two coming in under Obama. And so they had their first hearing, and all the lawyers called in. They couldn't bother to get off their asses and go to the Ninth Circuit District or the Ninth Circuit courts. They all called in like it was just a bizarre conference call where they were trying to decide what they wanted for lunch. But meanwhile, we have individuals whose religious freedoms are being stripped away at a regular basis. I just feel like this was a large enough issue for the lawyers to show up, as opposed to treat it like they were ordering something through a Hardee's drive-through. But nonetheless, so it looks like what's going to happen, and of course the defense is the pro-Trump individuals in this case, it looks like they're just trying to sort of get a 50-50 break where they want the circuit court judges to they'll allow them to say, okay, if you've been to this country before, you're allowed back in. If you have a spouse in this country, you're allowed here. If you have a visa or a green card, you can be allowed here. I think they want to get it so the only people that the ban holds up for is people who have never been here before, and they can never come here. And then they also had an argument, the pro-Trump case also had the argument regarding, is this solely based on religion, which is obviously completely unconstitutional. And they were talking about how in those 7 nations, those 7 countries make up 15% of the Muslim population worldwide. So because of that, it's not a Muslim ban. It's not... It doesn't target one religion over another, although you could make a strong case that if one person is targeted because of their religion, regardless if it's 1 or 1 million, it is still, unconstitutional. But that's sort of where Donald Trump's team is coming in on this.
I just realized something. This is a negotiation.
Yeah, it's a negotiation.
I mean, this is what it is. You asked for
it's because they didn't do it in the fucking first place, because he didn't go to Congress where all this stuff is supposed to be hashed out. So now we have to do it in the courts like Roy Cohn would want.
Trump is asking for the moon and he's getting the sky. I mean, this is something that people said that the Democrats should have done with health care, is that you ask for something absolutely ridiculous, something that could never possibly happen, and you get about half of that. You go way too far. This is a business tactic. I mean, people are talking like this is what he does. This is what these people, I mean, really? And to give him credit, this is exactly what he said he was going to do. This is exactly how he said that he was going to run this country. This is exactly how he said, this is why you elected Trump. You elected him to be a businessman. And that's exactly how he is governing.
His businesses have, they have a long history of legality and being in the courts. That's his whole thing. Again, Cohn, his number one guy, I think we talked about this on the show last time, didn't we? He was McCarthy's number one guy.
No, I don't think we did.
Okay, Roy Cohn is, I'm sure people know, but for those that don't know, or for those that do, it doesn't matter. He worked with McCarthy. He was the one who did the whole Red Scare. He was
Joseph
the one
McCarthy.
The one who was purging the communists out of office, and he had a briefcase full of names. It turned out to be full of vodka, which is actually a communist drink of choice.
That's a good old Wisconsin boy.
Oh, good. He was one of our best ones. We have a couple of interesting politicians. Paul Ryan not being the worst out of all the individuals who have made their way through in Wisconsin. Duffy, for example, from the real world, Sean Duffy looks like kind of a Duffy, if you know what I'm saying, in a few recent press conversations. But so Cohn was Trump's number one guy, and this is where Trump got the notion to be a counterpuncher. This is a man who was so malicious. I was talking to my former boss. He's a producer, big-time producer, and he actually got to meet Cohn, and his father was actually on a list that Cohn had, and it was not a good list to be on.
No.
And he was like, and he told me his father, total peacenik, absolutely like total dove. He's like, if you get a chance, kill him. Like, that's how bad this Cohn guy was. And now he's deceased, obviously, but and so that was Trump's mentor. A lot of times people talk about Saul Alinsky, who ironically enough is somebody that Steve Bannon has modeled his approach after. And Saul Alinsky, going back to what you were saying, Marcus, when it comes to this bizarre juxtaposition now with the right hanging out with WikiLeaks, befriending Putin, hanging out not disavowing Steve Bannon, who follows Saul Alinsky. It is this bizarre world that's topsy-turvy, and it does play into that notion of the illusion of choice and the fact that all of these people are playing for the same team and they're just giving us a different quarterback.
I mean, people talked about Obama. They used the word socialist with him as if it was the absolute worst word that you could use to describe a person. Bannon has come right out and said, I'm a Leninist.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It doesn't make any, this is American politics has become American politics in the early part of the 21st century has become a case study in cognitive dissonance. It is insane how this is working. It's insane how this is all playing out.
And the right is going to have a lot of explaining to do in the year 2020, because I would not be surprised if we can even make it 4 years with this administration, if he's not primaried by somebody like a Ted Cruz, who I thought actually did a very good job yesterday against Bernie Sanders. That was a great debate, and we could talk about it at length, but it was about health care, and I think it was really fun to see people pay attention again to these issues. Yeah. And it was the more substantive debate yesterday on CNN than we got the entire election cycle, which I thought was kind of actually disheartening.
So Cruz came out reasonable, huh?
Well, they definitely agreed on one thing that I absolutely agree with, which is you should be able to buy health care across all 50 states. I don't understand. We live in a nation of options. We have multiple options for toothpaste, for toilet paper, for every shoes, socks, whatever the hell you want. Different, different flosses. I don't know why I'm so focused on oral hygiene at this point in time, but it is strange to me that we don't have a solution, a huge buffet of options when it comes to health care. And so that was actually something they agreed on. Obviously, they disagreed with single payer and other sort of more core issues. Of course, Cruz wanting to more put it in the private sector and allow industry and corporations and things like that to have control over it, and Bernie Sanders wanting to have the government to have control over it. I think Bernie had a bad moment when he looked at a small business owner who herself didn't have health care, could not afford to pay her 49 employees health care, and sort of chastised her a little bit and constantly sort of mocked the fact she had she was a hairstylist in Texas, and he sort of made it seem as if that wasn't a normal business or something. Well, either way, but then of course Cruz fumbled on a few things as well.
Well, concerning that debate, at least they agreed on something, because that's where compromise happens. You have that one thing that you agree on, and then you work from there, and that I think it's been the problem for the last 8 years, and I think it's going to continue to be the problem, where Democrats and Republicans aren't allowed to agree on anything. They just aren't allowed. And it's going to be the exact same thing where, Republicans, the reason why they weren't allowed to agree with anything that Democrats were going to try to put through was because the Republican would get creamed in the primary because, Republicans hated Obama so bad. We're going to get the exact same thing with Democrats, where they're not going to agree with anything that Trump said, because if they do, they're going to get creamed in the primaries because the left hates them. Hates Trump so bad.
Certainly going to be obstructionists here for the next couple of years. Cruz Bernie did make a good point when Cruz was discussing just access, right? You can have access, but if you can't afford it, then theoretically you don't have access. So it was a good back and forth, and Cruz and Bernie also both agreed the healthcare industry has about doubled their profits. They made about $15 billion last year. It was about $7 billion in 2008, and of course it went up under Bush as well. But there is no denying that, and they both agree that it is bad that the healthcare industry has been able to flourish so well under Obamacare. Of course, they basically wrote the law. So there was no way that they weren't getting theirs, and they certainly got more than their fair share of money. But in premiums going through the roof. So they both agreed it had to be fixed, and I thought that was a good thing. And once you get to completely abolishing it, I'm against that. But once you get to we must go further with it, I'm also against that. You have to meet in the middle on these things. And there were about 4 moments of true compromise that if they continue on in that direction, they can do some major things. But I have a feeling they won't. But you were saying, Marcus, interestingly enough, about obstructionism, the Republicans not allowing Merrick Garland, not giving Merrick Garland a vote. Of course, Barack Obama, Supreme Court justice choice, he would have filled up the bench. He would have filled Scalia's seat. And now, of course, we've got Gorsuch up there under Trump. The interesting thing here regarding the Muslim travel ban, so now it's at the federal level, and if they say this is unconstitutional, it goes back to the lower courts. The lower courts decide again. If they decide it's unconstitutional, it goes up to the federal level. Then obviously after that, it would go to the Supreme Court level. In case of a tie, which is extremely possible in this situation, it goes back to the federal level, and that is where it's decided. And so whatever their conclusion was, which obviously would make it unconstitutional, because that's the only reason it would go up to the Supreme Court, the travel ban would be done away with, and Donald Trump would have his first legal loss of the administration. Yeah. So it's one of those great ironies, because we don't know. Perhaps Merrick Garland would have deemed it constitutional, or at least parts of it constitutional, and now that it's going to be decided if it's decided in the federal courts, they might not get anything at all.
Yeah, they might not. I mean, the question is here, though, is how long is this going to take to go back and forth? Is it going to take long enough where Gorsuch does get on the Supreme Court, in which case the travel ban will certainly stand?
So they seem like they want to get it done fairly quickly. The Ninth Circuit Court wants to get it done by the end of the week, send it back down, and obviously, just things move at a glacier pace. Yeah. Although nowadays glaciers are moving a lot faster, so maybe we'll have to change that analogy at a Chris Christie pace, extremely slow pace. So it's fascinating to see what's going to happen with it, and it just goes down. It comes down to negligence and the just total lack of foresight to what this policy is going to look like in action from the Trump administration and from the people who just pushed it through without talking with Congress and without talking to the people who need to know. They said we only spoke to people who were who had the need to know, but they absolutely did not, because I don't think they understand how government works, which is, of course, why Steve Bannon is now sitting on the National Security Council. So it is, it's going to be a fascinating couple of weeks here. I am really happy that people are paying attention. That is one of the good side effects of the Donald Trump administration. People are focused more than ever before on, what were once considered boring political, just boring politics, everyday politics, and almost, not custodial, but what do you call it? Paperwork duties. Clerical, yeah, basically just like clerical things. But now people are paying attention to those clerical things because those clerical things are being done by a custodian. There we go. That's what I meant to say.
Well, one of the possible good things that might come out of the Trump presidency is that he could end up breaking the current gridlock that we have right now, because
gridlock? Gridlock. General Stockdale, just the best.
Well, that he might actually end up breaking this collective gridlock, because there might be a collective hatred for Donald Trump and the way that he does things. You might actually have the Republicans and the Democrats working together, because Trump's base is shrinking all the time. I don't think that Trump's base is growing. And I think if they have a common enemy, if they have something to unite, something to say like, look, this is what happens when someone who doesn't have any experience whatsoever in governance gets into power. You need people who know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. Please, they have to ask for the Americans' trust back. That's what they have to do. If they can regain the trust of the American people, then I think that things will be much better. But I don't know how they're going to regain that trust. I really don't, because it is so amazingly damaged. The people's trust in Congress and the people's trust in politicians is so ridiculously damaged that I really hope that they can come back from this on, the merit of fighting against Donald Trump, or fighting against incompetence, fighting against ignorance, because that's what elected Donald Trump. Okay, so yeah, and just to give some numbers here, this is according to a constant/political poll. 47% of voters currently approve of Trump's job performance, down from 49% in the same poll from the previous week. Trump's disapproval ratings has also increased from 41% to 46%, so those aren't good. And now keep in mind, 3 weeks in, most presidents get a little leeway. They get, every president gets leeway.
At least over 50%, because at the end of the day, like we talk about, on November 9th, we have to, this is our president now, and even though it was Donald Trump, we still said we got to give him a chance. And that's how much the American people, they have faith in their government, and they have a patriotism, and they don't want to see the executive branch totally fall off the tree and drown in a river somewhere. They want to see it succeed, because theoretically then all of us succeed. So now Donald Trump is down again. Yes, disapproval ratings are up to 46%, and the poll found that more than half of voters, 55%, either approve or strongly approve of Trump's travel ban, which is interesting because you don't hear a lot from the supporter side of it. And I don't think I think that is because, Trump, he did run on a campaign of fear, and that's still exactly what they're doing right now. I think Donald Trump almost, I don't even want to say it because I think it's almost too nefarious. But if a terror attack happens on U.S. soil from someone in the Middle East, regardless if it's from one of those 7 countries, Donald Trump will feel vindicated.
He will.
And that's why he said if there is a terror attack, we have to blame it on the judge that put a halt or put a stay on the Muslim travel ban, as opposed to taking responsibility for himself.
Well, say what you will about Obama, but he never cheered a terrorist attack. He never looked at a terrorist attack as an opportunity to further his own agenda.
Well,
Donald Trump wakes up every morning and prays for the deaths of Americans.
We don't know that.
He prays for a terrorist attack. He wants a terrorist attack.
He does want to feel vindicated,
He wants
think.
to feel vindicated,
Well,
and the way he will feel vindicated is through a terrorist attack, and a terrorist attack equals dead Americans. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I don't think that you're right. We can't have it. I don't want to think that the man wakes up every morning and wishes for a terror attack. But I would say if a terror attack does happen, specifically from an immigrant from the Middle East area, he will use it to its political gain as much as humanly possible. We can't say that the sitting president wants to see dead Americans. I think
that goes a little far. I'll admit
well,
that.
It's almost Hannity and O'Reilly-esque what they were talking about with Obama.
You know what? You make a very good point there. I agree with you. That is definitely going a little bit too far. But at the very least, he is looking for vindication. If there's one thing that Donald Trump loves, it's vindication.
Yeah, and he would be vindicated. Absolutely. Yeah. So also in this poll, 54% of independents, 82% of Republicans support the travel ban, 65% of Democrats oppose it. So this is where we're really getting that polarizing, this polarizing world that we're living in. And just 34% of Democrats say they want Democrats in Congress to find ways to work with President Trump in order to get things done. The poll also found 56% of Democrats believe their elected officials should stick to their principles when working with Trump, even if that means blocking all legislation or nominees for government posts. So now we have the Democrats learning from the Republicans, playing simply an to be obstructionists. And, in my opinion, I want a functioning working government. It's difficult to get a functioning working government when we have so much gerrymandering and so much redistricting. And these people, like you just said, Marcus, are horrified of having to go back to their daily lives. And I think we could we need congressional term limits. I would also like to see one 6-year term for president, because what's happening now is these people, and they feel an immense amount of pressure, the Democrats, to not give up anything, not give up any ground when it comes to the Trump administration. We have 4 years of this. They have to do something. We have to have government work in some way, because if we don't, it's a national security issue at the end of the day. And everyone is going to be hurt if we can't get these people to compromise on a few things. If Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz can compromise on a few things, I'm sure we can get other people to compromise on things. That being said, we don't have to compromise on the Muslim travel ban and certain other things that he's pushing through. But when it comes down to Gorsuch, for example, he's a constitutional scholar. He is not nearly the worst thing. As a matter of fact, he's being touted as the only good thing that Donald Trump has done by many for his past 3 weeks. And so I hope the Democrats don't use up all the political capital that they have in stopping somebody like Gorsuch, because he's filling Scalia's seat. It's really sort of a moot issue at this time, and the next appointee will be much more important. So I hope the Democrats are smart and they don't use it all up. Speaking of which, just really quickly to go back on the Betsy DeVos thing, she has gotten a lot of heat online. People really hate her. She was officially confirmed. It was a 50-50 tie in the Senate, and Mike Pence, the first time a VP has ever had to act in that role, he made it official. She is now head of education in this country.
Okay. We'll be having Molly back to talk about why that's terrible.
Absolutely, yes. Molly Neffel, that was a great episode, and we can't wait to have her back. So I think that's pretty much it. We got, just to wrap it up, it's in the courts where Donald Trump loves to be regarding the Muslim travel ban. They don't believe it's a Muslim ban because it's only 15% of Muslims worldwide, so how could they be we're only offending 15% of them. It's not real. And then, of course, the religious test on the other side, believing it is unconstitutional. Donald Trump doesn't read what he writes or what he signs. I don't even know if he reads what he writes.
He doesn't read anything. He likes to be spoon-fed information. He likes to watch TV, and that's it. He likes to be spoon-fed it. And if you give him something to read, he will not read it.
he was watching Morning Joe, and Morning Joe was talking about Steve Bannon, what we were talking about earlier in the show, and how Steve Bannon, is sort of the mouse spinning the wheels inside of Donald Trump's mind, inside of his skull. And he immediately tweeted, not at Morning Joe, but just sort of subtweeted, "I make all my own decisions. I'm a very smart person. It's all about accurate data. Everyone who knows me knows I have the best data." I mean, it's very interesting. So Bannon, has a much larger role in this White House than previously hoped for. And that certainly didn't go away. When it comes to fake protesters, none of that is real. No. It would be. I do wonder. Now, I'm not saying fake paid protesters. I'm not saying that unions probably didn't get on their phone and called their union workers and be like, let's go protest. That's democracy. Yeah. That's not a fake protester. That is somebody who has, the churches do it too. The Right to Life March was done orchestrated in the exact same way that all marches are. The church leaders said, "Hey, we're going to go protest for life and for anti-abortion." Okay, and the unions and pro-women's groups were like, "Hey, we're going to go protest." That's real, and that's nothing wrong.
Yeah, and speaking of the unions, the Betsy DeVos, a lot of that pushback came from teachers unions.
Oh, of course,
teachers unions organizing and going against her. So yeah, this does happen, but that is still democracy. None of these people are being paid. I mean, I just can't believe that. I mean, the people who are saying that they're paid protesters are the same people who cannot believe that someone could possibly do something altruistic. They can't believe that someone could possibly use their own free time to do anything besides watch TV.
Well, they definitely are doing altruistic things now, and that's a good thing for sure.
But on the other hand, concerning that, those same people who think that the protesters, there's no way they could possibly do anything with their free time besides watch TV. A lot of those people, they work their ass off. They are working class people that can't imagine anybody at the end of the day, at the end of a long day, say at the end of a 12-hour nursing shift, they can't imagine anybody going out and protesting. And I get that. I understand that. But that does not mean that every single person in America does not have the willpower to go out and protest for something they believe in.
Absolutely. And of course, with the paid protesters, again, just want to point out the Trump bots, and no one's talking about this in the media. The Trump 33% of every time you said something negative against Trump and you got called the FA rhymes with tag word. It was a 1/3 chance that was a robot just being homophobic or just trying to be inflammatory, because the robots obviously have no feelings, and you did get that sense when combating them on social media. Mm-hmm. It is kind of terrible to think about. You are fighting a machine that has zero skin in the game. Mm-hmm. They'll always win because they don't care whatsoever. And of course, once again, we live in a world where where Bill O'Reilly, rather, and the people like him are in cahoots with WikiLeaks, with Vladimir Putin, with Steve Bannon, a.k.a. also that means they are with Saul Alinsky, which is just absolutely fascinating. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Let's see, Marcus, anything else you want to talk about your social media?
Yeah, I'm at Marcus Parks for everything, and go follow me on Spotify. I make new playlists every single week.
That's awesome. And keep on supporting all the shows here on CCR. And please buy the shirt if you want it. I think it's really cool. And again, we'll get one with just the logo. And we have a new system, so we can do a bunch of things.
We're going to be doing a bunch of things. Yeah, we got a Jackie shirt coming out.
Oh, yeah.
That's my name. We've got a Don't Come At Me with That t-shirt.
That's great.
In the Big Dog style coming out here real soon. And a ton of others.
I want to get ones that says Man of the People or Woman of the People. Isn't that good? Yeah. All right. You can find me on Twitter at Ben Kissel, Instagram at Ben Kissel1. I'm getting a little bit better at it. And email me for the dumpster fire chats. I'm going to keep them going as long as people email. I think they're really good. And it's really fun to hear your guys' opinions. And so you can find that. You can email me at benk721@gmail.com. And all right, everyone, we'll talk to you soon.
For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to cavecomedyradio.com.